So, good morning everybody and welcome to Children's Scrutiny Panel. My name is Itrat Ali. I'll be chairing the meeting today. It's the 29th of August, 10:30. So before we start, I'll do introductions. So if we go around the room, starting with Councillor McKirker.
Morning, I'm Councillor McKirker and Ward Councillor for Denby Dale.
Morning, Tom Brailsford, Executive Director of Children's Services for Kirklees Council.
Good morning, I'm Joanne Sanders. I'm Service Director for Learning and Early Support at Kirklees Council.
Good morning, I'm Anna Gledhill, Head of Service for Sufficiency in Children's, and I'm here on behalf of Vicky Metheringham, who is Service Director for Child Protection and Family Support.
Good morning, I'm Stuart Horn. I'm the Head of Children's Commissioning for West Yorkshire ICB and Kirklees Council.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Jane Ryler, Cabinet Member with the Education Portfolio.
Thank you. I'll be supported today by Helen.
Good morning, I'm Helen Kilroy, the Assistant Democracy Manager. Thank you.
Claire Gardiner, Democracy Officer.
Right, thank you everybody. I'd also like to welcome two members of the public that will be joining us today as well, so welcome. So item number one, we've received apologies today from Councillor Butt and Councillor Kendrick, and I understand Councillor Bramwell will be joining online. Is she online? No. She's yet to join, so we'll wait for Councillor Bramwell. She'll join as and when. So I'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, so minutes of the previous meeting. So to approve the minutes of the meeting that the panel held on the 28th of April 2025. So I propose that these are a correct record. Have we got a seconder?
Absolutely, I second that.
Thank you. Councillor McKirker, seconded. Item number 3, declarations of interest. Are there any interests to declare? Any items on the agenda of which you have a disclosable pecuniary interest? None declared? None? Just a reminder, item number 4, the meeting is held in public and this only changes when there's a need to consider exempt information as obtained on Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act. So we move swiftly on to item number 5, which is deputations and petitions. So no deputations are received, but we have received some questions today, and we'll allow a maximum of 15 minutes for public questions on the agenda. So can I move on to ask, I think it's Corinne Hunter, who's asking a question on behalf of Emma Day to read out her 2 public questions. So over to Corinne. Can I remind you to use your mic when asking the questions?
Good morning. I'm just going to read these off. I didn't realise till this morning I was going to be reading these out. Emma was attending, but she's unable, so just let me read these as they are. So Emma says, I wish to raise concerns about the local authorities' compliance with statutory mediation requirements for EHCP decisions, supported by evidence from a recent Freedom of Information response and the LA's own policy documents. Under the Children and Families Act 2014 and CENREGS 2014, parents must be able to access mediation advice and obtain a mediation certificate before proceeding to the first-tier tribunal. While parents can choose not to mediate, the LA has a statutory duty to provide effective mediation services when requested, with meetings required to be held within 30 days of the mediation service notifying the LA. CEN Code of Practice emphasises that mediation should be a genuine attempt to resolve disagreements, not a procedural box-ticking exercise. With CEN tribunal waiting times at record highs nationally, effective mediation is crucial for timely dispute resolution. When mediation fails... Last sentence, then I'm on to the question.
If you can move on to the
Yep.
question, please.
Families are forced into lengthy tribunal processes, causing educational delays for vulnerable children and significantly higher costs for the LA. With that in mind, and looking at the Freedom of Information data covering the 1st of July to the 31st of December 2024, that shows that 67 requests for mediation across all EHC disagreements, there were actually 0 mediation meetings arranged within the required 30-day time frame. We'd like to ask what immediate action has or will be taken to address this complete breakdown of statutory mediation services, please.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Karen. If I could ask you to ask the second question, please. Thank you.
Yep, the second question is the terms of reference for the EHCP decision-making panel, September 2024, shows that only the chair, the EHCP senior manager, has decision-making authority. The FOI response states that all overturned decisions via mediation are taken back to the panel for processing. Given that effective mediation should enable immediate implementation of agreements, why do all mediation outcomes require subsequent panel approval rather than being resolved at the mediation meeting itself? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'd just like to welcome Councillor Bramwell, who's joined online on Teams now. So welcome, Councillor Bramwell. Can I just move on to Lisa Green now to read out her 2 public questions, and just to remind you to stick to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's understood that as part of the panel's upcoming work plan, scrutiny is to be given to the EHCP process and the local authorities' use of tribunals to settle cases. My first question is, will the panel please provide detail on what their specific focus of scrutiny will be regarding EHCPs and the use of tribunals?
Thank you. And your second question?
My second question is, what is the extent of the panel's powers to ensure lawful accountability in this area, please?
Thank you. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you both for taking the time to come and ask your questions. It's really appreciated. And in terms of the role of this panel, scrutiny does not have any decision-making powers. But what we can do is we can influence policies and decisions that are made by the council. We can gather evidence when appropriate and make recommendations to Cabinet. The panel can scrutinise policy and service areas that fall within our remit. And we can hold the Cabinet to account. The panel are scheduled to consider EHCP, timescales and compliance and the tribunal's process as part of our work programme, and that's scheduled to be considered by the panel in December this year. Some of the questions that you've asked, they raise a number of wider issues and concerns in terms of the areas the panel will be focusing on, and I'm happy to take those away to be briefed by officers with a view to potentially widening our area of focus in relation to EHCPs. So thank you again for raising those. If you'd like a more detailed response to any of your questions in relation to EHCPs, I would suggest that you can also submit them to the decision makers at Cabinet or at Council. Is that okay? If you'd like if you have a supplementary question in relation to my response, I'm happy for you to ask that.
My supplementary question's actually already been answered, which was, could the panel provide detail on when this scrutiny will take place, and you have answered that, so thank you.
Thank you. So over to the panel members, are you all in agreement with that? Or any further comments or questions? No.
No, I think, like I say, I think it would be useful to consider those in terms of our the work plan that we look at going forward. So.
Absolutely. So I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you again for coming, attending today and asking your questions.
Can I just ask my supplementary question before we move on, please?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So thinking about the FOI time period, July to December 2024, during the same period, approximately 48% of refusal decisions were overturned via mediation. What measures will address this disconnect between initial refusal decisions and subsequent approvals, suggesting fundamental flaws in the decision-making panel's application of legal criteria?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I just want to reiterate all supplementary questions, as I stated, are in relation to my response. So if you want to submit that as a separate question, I'm more than happy to do that at a later date. Thank you. Are you staying for the next part of the meeting, or would you like to? Yeah. Happy for you to stay, or happy for you to? Right. Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the Kirklees Send Sufficiency for Kirklees, the Kirklees Send Sufficiency for Kirklees 2025 to 28. So the panel will consider the Kirklees Send Sufficiency for Kirklees strategy document, which provides information on the work being undertaken to ensure sufficiency for provision for children with special education needs and disabilities in Kirklees. So over to Jo Anne Saunders, Service Director for Learning and Early Supports.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart Horn, who's the Head of Children's Sufficiency, is going to take you through some of the detailed work. He's been leading a group of practitioners to have brought this Send Sufficiency strategy together. So I'm going to hand over to Stuart, if that's okay.
Thank you, Jo. So I'm here today to ask Scrutiny to consider and support the Send Sufficiency strategy for Kirklees, and to note the actions that we're undertaking to address some of the issues that report raises. So the Send Sufficiency strategy is something that we, as a local authority, have a duty to produce to demonstrate that we understand the needs of children with special educational needs and disabilities in Kirklees, and to define the provisions that we have in place for children to meet those needs and to support their learning, and as well as to recognise any gaps in provision that we have, to identify any areas for growth and any areas that we need to develop in terms of our provision to meet those future needs. It's important to note that in some this can also mean where we need to decommission certain types of provision where the needs have changed, and there are a couple of examples of that in the report. So the sufficiency is a technical sounding word, but really it means, have we got enough of the right places? And Jo has mentioned previously we've brought the Send Big Plan to Scrutiny, and we've tried to use language which is more approachable and easily to understand for people. So when we use the term enough of the right stuff, that's what we're talking about in terms of the sufficiency here. So have we got the right learning places for our children to meet their needs? So as Jo mentioned, we used a variety of data and intelligence sources to pull this report together, and people from across the partnership, so practitioners from learning services, from schools, from the health sector, and voluntary and parent carer forums to help us design this approach. It's important that we use consistent agreed data sets for this, as there are many different sources that you could look at, but we have to agree a certain point in time in terms of consistency. So for us, the principal data set is the SEN2 data set, which is an annual return to Department for Education, which we can agree is a sound starting point for this. So, as I said, to pull out some of the examples of the areas that we identified from this process, we know that we've got an increase in speech and language needs, particularly in early years. We know that social, emotional, mental health needs are rising, and this is particularly of note in secondary years and points of transition. We know that children can often thrive well in primary settings but struggle to make the change to a mainstream primary school without additional support. So we need to look at how we address that. We're also seeing a rise in children with needs relating to their neurodiversity. And again, there are similarities there that often our primary settings can be very inclusive, but our secondary settings need some more support to develop that inclusive approach. So this is a main strand of our strategy, really. It's how we develop that inclusive approach as far as we possibly can. It's also important to note that whilst neurodiversity itself is quite a broad spectrum of issues, we are seeing an increase of children where they have multiple needs, so their neurodiversity may be combined with a mental health need or a learning need or a behaviour that challenges, and it's how we look at our provisions being suitably prepared and supported to support children with that range of needs. We've also identified a need for improving our post-16 provision, particularly in terms of, as well as the quantity of places, but the type, range and diversity of provision, so that we can cater for children with a range of different interests, aspirations, abilities. So as well as the inclusivity approach, our strategy is also to educate children as close to home as possible. So we want to reduce our reliance on the independent school sector, and in particular out of area independent school sectors. So to do that, we need to increase or improve our state-funded local to Kirklees provisions. That's a key factor in our longer term strategy. There's a number of things that we have already done that are mentioned in the strategy, which I want to bring attention to. We're already well underway with the rebuild and expansion of 2 of our special schools. So the Joseph Norton Social Emotional Mental Health School construction has just begun on that at Deaton, and the new site for Woodley School and College for children with autism is about to start construction as well. That was in response to needs that were recognised some time ago, but it's obviously continued to evolve. Another thing that we've developed in recent years and continue to develop are what we call satellite provisions. So this is where special schools utilise space in mainstream schools. So children are on the roll of the special school and they're educated by special school staff, but they're on the mainstream school site. That has some benefits for some children where they can be more involved with the wider activities in the school and feel part of a bigger school community. So that approach has been successful. So we're looking at how we can expand that and continue to develop that approach. We have also developed a range of additional resource provisions, which are also provisions within a mainstream school to give additional support to children who need it. Our clusters, school clusters, are an important step in improving the inclusivity of our mainstream school approach. So they're groups of schools who are grouped together geographically, who can come together to share expertise, solve problems, and hopefully maintain children in that setting. So the sufficiency strategy itself isn't a standalone document. It sits alongside our other learning strategies in Kirklees, such as our Kirklees Future, the health and wellbeing strategy, and our pupil place planning strategy. It's important to note that it's not a static document. It will continue to evolve over time as new data and intelligence becomes available. We have a regular sufficiency strategy group meeting where professionals come together to analyse jointly the information that we receive and look at how we evolve and adapt the strategy to reflect that. And for example, the SEN2 data set that I referred to has recently been published, the most recent version. So we are meeting next week, in fact, to look at how that will impact. Well, there are also a few other things that we're looking at. We have applied to the government for an alternative provision free school. This will be a new provision which would be a huge benefit to us. We're just awaiting on the final outcome of that decision and if and when that will proceed. As I say, the post-16 provision is important to note that that ties in with our area of improvement around preparation for adulthood from our SEND inspection. So that's going to be an area of focus for us too. So the The report was attached to the papers that went out, as well as the appendix with some of the data that informed the report. And the report is published on the local offer. So I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Stuart. That was really comprehensive. Have we got any questions from panellists? Councillor McKirker or Councillor Bramwell online?
Hi, thank you. My question's on monitoring and transparency, and it's been touched on in the public questions a little bit today. The strategy notes that data sources include complaints, tribunals, annual reviews, but families, again, according to today, are reporting delays and barriers. How will the council transparently report on EHCP timeliness, mediation uptake, and tribunal outcomes as part of the strategy, so that families, schools and councillors can track whether improvements are real and sustainable?
Thank you, Councillor Bramwell. Joe?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Yes, absolutely. We are keen to publish, but I think, as Stuart said, SEN2 is something that all local authorities have to complete. It's like an annual census. So that has recently been published. I think we complete it. It runs for the calendar year, January to December. We submit that then between January and March, and then the DfE do their cleansing exercises. But that's it's a really good benchmark. So a lot of the information, we're not trying to hide anything. We do get an awful lot of FOI requests, so we are also looking at how best we can produce and publish reports. So, for example, as you will know, Councillor Bramwell, we moved our IT system from what was called Synergy to Liquid Logic, and that was done in November. We have just been investing significant resource in some help to produce reports here so the team can perform better and understand where deadlines are at, but also as we are comfortable with that data, there is no reason why we won't make that available. I think what Stuart said as part of this strategy, it's very much about understanding. I'll use the example, how many youngsters from September, year 5, and what are their needs, and how confident are we in terms of having sufficient provision of the right type to move forward. And it takes time to commission provision. It's important we use trend data as well as live data that exists in the team. So I think it wouldn't necessarily fall under this strategy, but we are looking at ways in which we can make more information readily available. It saves council officers a lot of time if we can signpost people to information on our website. But the SEN2 data is there for everybody. You can compare Kirklees with other local authorities as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor McKirker, question?
Firstly, can I just say it's exciting that they've actually started work on Joseph Norton, because obviously we've been following through that process for quite a while, so that's good to hear. I was interested to ask about, obviously, sufficiency in terms of those sort of designated places, even within mainstream schools, is crucial, but how much of our SEND sufficiency depends on the inclusivity of mainstream schools themselves, and what are we doing to try and make those environments as supportive as possible of young people in a more general sense, rather than just we have this many allocated places, because obviously if we can make the overall environment more inclusive, then a lot of the sort of spectrum of needs will be catered for within that mainstream setting.
I'll pick it up. I mean, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, we want all our settings to be as inclusive as possible. And I think, as Stuart said, our primary sector, particularly inclusive. Our secondary sector, we've got some really good examples of inclusivity, and some other areas where we need to work together on that. Yeah, just having additional resource provision doesn't automatically make school inclusive. So we have a lot of wraparound support. We've got the graduated approach, we've got our educational psychologist team, we've got Dingley's Promise, which we won a national award for, which is about inclusivity. We've got our school's hub approach now, which again promotes inclusivity. And I think as a leadership team, it was particularly recognised in the inspection report about how child-centred and inclusive we are. So we try and make that clear to all involved that we inspect inclusivity for our children and families. It's not always going to be possible, and also at times I think there are some challenges that our educational settings have that are practical. So some of the reasons the sufficiency ends up focusing on the practical is because they might need something building or a specific space for something, but absolutely that has to go alongside a philosophy of inclusivity. And us making sure that we wrap around our support from the council, but also across the partnership, from health services, from housing, across the way to kind of help people be inclusive. But I have to say, I think we've made some real strides over the past couple of years in terms of the support we offer and some of the expertise that we've got about inclusivity. Joe probably wants to pick up a couple of things as well.
Thank you. Yes, Tom, all of those things. And I think we've sort of walked forward to some initiatives. So, for example, 14 of our primary schools were involved in the Partnership for Inclusion and Neurodiversity. PINS, we're about to work with another 10 primary schools. The clusters are really starting to... we're starting to wrap some support around that real team around the cluster we've got, and have invested specialist outreach support. So if to model some strategies, that school to school support, sharing expertise. And it is, isn't it? It's looking at the early years, and I think that's what Tom referred to in terms of Dingley's Promise. And we have some real inclusivity. Stuart absolutely touched on it, alternative provision. We have commissioned, and we've talked here before about inclusion multi-agency panel, where schools actually can reach out for something to be alongside their offer, or a full-time alternative provision place. So it is trying to look at the right pathways, understand based on need. But I think we've got lots of good practice, but there's opportunity to do more now that clusters has been in place for a year as well. But I do think we seek out and go, we'll run with PINS, and we've been really fortunate in our approach to the neurodiversity opportunities. It's been a real collaborative approach with partners, with the voluntary sector, with our parent carer forum, we'll take the opportunities where they arise. So we do go looking for those things, and supporting Senkos. We have a really strong Senko network, bringing our Senkos together in groups so they can network and share best practice, and that's really been complemented now by clusters. So these are our youngsters. Let's try and include them wherever possible, but it has to be the right environment to meet their needs.
Thank you. And it sounds like there is a lot on offer. I suppose part of my question is around if the settings are not looking for what you're offering. Have we got any mechanism for encouraging settings where potentially there might be an issue around inclusion to suggest that they do need to consider some of the things, that whole range of things that you've got on offer?
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of information available to professionals as well as parents on the local offer. We do have we have lots of inclusion pages on our school-specific websites. So, for example, Specialist Outreach have pages, and there's ways to access those. But also the Inclusion Multi-Agency Panel, the beauty of that is the multi-agency-ness of it. And there's a lovely triage process. It might be about a request for some alternative provision, but often it can also be about, I need some help and support with strategies. I think sometimes as well through decision-making panels, we've got some specialist teams sat around those. So it is very much about raising awareness. Very rarely does somebody just have a, no, you can't have anything, without some advice and support being offered. So, yeah, and like I say, we invest heavily. We co-produce the Senko network. We make sure that we are raising awareness, and the partnership is raising awareness with the Senkos, but clusters as well. We're bringing cluster leads together so we can disseminate information. So the information's there. We appreciate it's busy, and we've got new to Kirklees. So if there's a new head teacher or there's a new Senko, because there's always staff turnover, we do try and pick those up through some of our training programs as well. So we do work quite hard to raise awareness, but I guess there's always more we can do.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. Well, just a clarification really. So I was just looking at the next steps, and it's great, you know, what you've outlined there. So one of the things I noticed, the SEND sufficiency group that's been set up, is that relatively new? And also in terms of it's good to see that multi-agency and different sort of stakeholders contributed into that, because I think that helps to shape the overall plan. In terms of transparency, is the outcomes or findings or discussions, recommendations that group make, will that be available for this panel or, you know, members to have a look at? Or? It's
not an entirely new approach, but we have formalised it and put some more rigour around it. The outcomes will be available in the form of the updated report when it's agreed and published. Will be made available in the way that we have this one.
And for example, so we've had, you know, in our big plan 2, the big plan 2, you can see there was a report to Cabinet. We had a strategy around additional resource provisions. We're sense checking the numbers. Have we got enough? Have we got too much? So we've not quite secured everything yet we want to. We do periodically bring, you know, as appropriate reports back to Cabinet. If things require capital investment, so as you know, the 2 schools, this council is significantly investing its very high amount of capital into those. That requires decision making beyond what officers can undertake. So where appropriate, we will bring that for a Cabinet decision, and there are opportunities via scrutiny for those pre-decisions. There's a standard agenda item. We've just had an example, some of the output, and it actually came in our SEND inspection. So we did have a very rigorous process around alternative provision. Through the work of the group that Stuart's been leading, we identified, and listening to our head teachers, some of the analysis of what the requests were through Inclusion Multi-Agency Panel, that there was an opportunity to grow. There was additional need for primary alternative provision. And there was some work undertaken by Stuart's team to co-produce with head teachers a strategy whereby our schools might be able to step forward with that. Because the way in which that is funded will be through the high needs block, because it's a placement cost rather than a capital cost. We took that to our schools forum, and now next week there'll be an expression of interest process for schools to step forward, and we want that to be locally based because these are smaller children, and it's that opportunity to step out with a view to assessing need and be able to step back in. So there's a range of, it depends what, but it is all transparent. Schools forum papers are published. It's about the appropriate decision making in that respect, but we will, you know, as Stuart said, when we refresh the strategy, we'll talk about what have we done since the last one and what do we still intend to do. And some things are outside our control, like the AP Free School, which is with the DFE. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. Have we got any further questions? Councillor Bramwell.
Yeah, just going back to the response that I had on my first question too, in terms of data sharing, and I don't mean data sharing in terms of multi-agency or the approach through a multi-agency approach through services or organisations that the council's working with in terms of the strategy in a manager position or an operational. How are we feeding this back to parents as in my councillor capacity through residents? When it comes to, you know, the barriers that my residents have said that they face and things like this, and the tribunals, etc., how are we feeding information back to show residents how far the council has come and how it's progressed and how they're now dealing with things and the protocol? How are we educating our residents? Some of the feedback I've had from parents, not all, but some, is that they have to go looking for this information, or if they're dealing with, you know, a certain EHCP plan, then they've got to go and educate themselves and they've got to go find this process. So just in terms of building that rapport and that relationship with these parents so that we can improve these children's lives, how are we educating residents and parents on protocols, in the steps to follow, and just in the process in itself?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Bramwell.
Thanks, Councillor Bramwell. I'll pick that up, Chair. We're doing it in a number of ways, really, Councillor Bramwell. So I don't know if you've looked on the website of the Kirklees local offer, but that outlines all the steps in terms of what you need to do in terms of an education, health and social care plan, what the needs assessment involves, what the responsibilities of the local authority are. So we've got a very accessible local offer that does that quite clearly for parents. We also do that on a one-to-one basis. So we give parents advice, schools give parents advice around that as well. We also engage with our parents group, so PCAN, who are our nominated parent carer forum. We work individually and in groups with them as well. So I think I'm not sure the basis of your question, because in terms of the process, I think the process is well understood. And I think probably in terms of our performance, we do talk in open forums quite regularly. So, for example, we know our 20-week compliance now for this month is around 76%, which is 24% above the national average. And I've said that in a number of public arenas. We know we've got 5,000 education, health and social care plans, and actually the number of complaints that we've got against those 5,000 plans is relatively small. Our tribunals are in line with national average, so tribunals have gone up nationally, and it's not where we want to be. We want to resolve more local mediation. But a lot of this stuff is there in public meetings and in public areas, and when it's not, we speak to parents as individuals. We also have a telephone line that Senkos can ring and ask for advice. But I do think what we were talking about earlier, Councillor Bramwell, is some of that stuff, particularly around performance, and maybe some of the sufficiency stuff would be better published on the local offer. So if we do that regularly, that makes it more transparent. And I also think that, as people will be aware, when we were inspected under the old framework, every 3 months we met with the DFE and NHS England, who assessed where we were and gave us a written letter. When we're assessed again, and we have that process under the new framework, we're thinking about making sure we publish those letters on the local offer as well. So I agree with you in terms of transparency. I think it's really important, but I do think there is a lot out there currently.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor McKirker.
Thank you. I was just looking at the final table, so the conclusion and summary of needs. And I was just interested to know, obviously there's one area where we've actually got a decline in need around, it looks like special school places for visual impairment and hearing impairment. And that's indicated that we are going to reduce those places. So I'd like to hear a little bit more about how that is managed. I presume there's some flexibility in the future going forward, that if that need changes, we can respond to it. And also just a question about the satellite provisions, which sound like they've been working really well. And obviously while we've got this transition phase with the 2 schools being under construction, they're going to be taking a lot of that sort of slack, as it were. But in the longer term, how much of those we can retain, and also if there's any consideration as to where they are going to be. So from a purely parochial perspective, Joseph Norton is moving from my ward and obviously moving into Huddersfield, and I know that for Kirklees that's positive in terms of the majority of students being able to access it, but has consideration been given to maybe maintaining a satellite provision in Kirklees Rural or things like that?
Yeah, thank you. So the document here, in terms of what needs to increase or decrease, is more about, it's just that it's telling us that a certain provision is likely to increase or decrease. It doesn't yet go into the detail of exactly how that will be done. In terms of the satellites, you're right, we have currently got some in place and some more in development, that will, part of their function at the moment is to help ease that transition into the new expanded special school buildings. What that does give us is some flexibility in the future about how we use those provisions that have been developed, which we'll keep under assessment as we go along. But whilst those physical buildings and perhaps even the staff teams are in place, it does give us some flexibility and choice about whether we need to continue to use them for that purpose, something else, or not at all. And in terms of the geographical location, that's also a consideration. But some of it is also about availability and opportunities. So sometimes that's physical infrastructure, buildings, etc., are a limiting factor.
Thank you. So if there's no further questions or comments, I'd just like to say thank you, Joe and Stuart, for your presentation and the answer to the questions. So we'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is pre-decision scrutiny, so any cabinet decisions on the horizon. I know we've had apologies from Councillor Kendrick, but I don't know if Councillor Riley, if you've got anything that you want to highlight, or anybody that wants to highlight anything that's up and coming that we're aware of.
No, nothing at the moment that I can bring forward.
Yeah, not as far as I'm aware, Chair. I think what we did say, didn't we, is that we'll be sharing the improvement plan following the inspection informally with scrutiny members, and then we'll be coming back on October the 17th with so I know it's not pre-decision scrutiny, but actually it's a chance to input into that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So we've got that scheduled for October the 17th. So we'll move on to agenda item number 9. So again, this is feedback regarding the Kirklees Parenting Board. So I don't think there's been a meeting since our last meeting. So there's obviously nothing to feedback from that.
I'm really sorry, I know it's not directly relevant. I just had a question about, obviously, is it only yourself who attends the Parenting Board, or?
Yeah, I attend. It's chaired by Councillor Kendrick. Tom's there. Joe?
No, it's fine. I just was trying to get some understanding. So I think it's really good that you attend that and see what's going on. How much does particularly the young people who sit on that board hear about what Scrutiny does? I just wondered whether there was an opportunity for you to speak to the Parenting Board and those members in particular to kind of highlight the role of Scrutiny so that they have that understanding of what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that you make. From my observations there, the young people there are actually so involved in, formulating the basis of that meeting and really well engaged, and there's a lot of, two-way listening as well, so it's good. So I think they probably would benefit from that, so I'll raise that with Councillor Kendrick, the chair, and I'm happy to do that if she allows that. Yeah, they'd actually welcome doing that. The final item on the agenda is item number 10, which is the work programme and agenda plan for 25-26, which is ever expanding. I assume you've all had an opportunity to look at the updated version. It does get updated regularly. Is there anything that anybody has got any questions or comments about it? Are we all happy? Councillor McGurk.
It was just something that had come up from which meeting was it I went to? Helen. Was it the feedback I'd sent on the specialist placement panel? I can't remember. I sent you some feedback notes, didn't I? And one of the questions that I had was about whether we had any view on the EHCP quality assurance framework. And Helen said it's not on the work programme at the moment, so I was just flagging it up as something which I think we should at least consider introducing to our work plan for the year if we can squeeze it in somewhere.
Yeah, no, I do recall that email. As I say, because if you look at the work programme, we are pretty chock-a-block with agenda items there. I'm happy to have a discussion if it's something that you think we can. I'm not sure we'll be able to squeeze it on this year, but following year, yeah. We can definitely discuss it and see if there is any scope to put it on that.
Yeah, Chair, and I think in terms of bringing the plan back, obviously one of the areas for improvement is around continuing to improve the quality of EHCP plans and the quality assurance framework. So you should get some assurance from the actions that come back about that. And as people might be aware, we're using a tool called Envision 360 to audit care plans, and we're doing that at a senior level right down as well, so that we're getting an understanding of where things are. But that will be included, that continuation of improvement will be included in the action plan.
So again, if there's no further comments, I think that concludes our meeting today. So it's been a bit of a short meeting, so you got some time back. Thank you everyone for attending, and enjoy the rest of your day and weekends. Thank you.